Your DNA is maybe the most personal data that exists, right? It's literally the blueprint for who you are. And right now, that blueprint, it's going digital. Now, this is an incredible leap forward, no doubt. It promises a future of personalized medicine and amazing discoveries, but it also creates a new kind of vulnerability, something we've never really had to deal with before. So the big question is, how do we protect our most essential code? That's exactly what we're going to dive into. All right, so here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the amazing promise locked inside our genes. Then, we'll get into the weeds on the unique dangers this data presents and take a hard look at the gaps in our current laws. From there, we'll explore the blueprint for a new kind of defense, a real fortress for our DNA, and break down its layers of protection. And finally, we'll look at the huge choice this leaves all of us with for the future of privacy. So, let's start at the beginning. Why are we even doing this? Why digitize our DNA in the first place? Well, the simple answer is that the value locked inside our genetic code is just immense. It has the power to totally change medicine, our understanding of history, and even justice as we know it. Okay, think about this. Imagine going to the doctor and getting treatments tailored not just to your symptoms, but to your specific genetic profile. This is the heart of personalized medicine. We're moving away from that old one-size-fits-all approach and instead using your own genomic data to pick the best drugs, the right dosages, and maybe even avoid nasty side effects before they ever happen. It's a total game changer. And this is probably the one you've heard of, maybe even done yourself. Consumer DNA testing companies have blown the doors wide open on our past. They let us trace our family histories back through generations, connect with relatives we never knew we had, and really uncover that deep personal story of our heritage that's written right there in our DNA. And then there's the justice side of things, where genomic data is, well, it's a massive tool. Forensic scientists can use DNA profiles to identify people with unbelievable accuracy. This has helped solve cold cases that were decades old and, just as importantly, has helped get wrongfully convicted people out of jail. And this is where it gets really huge, on a global scale. Researchers are using these massive genomic datasets to understand the very roots of diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. By finding those little genetic markers and figuring out how they affect our health, drug companies can invent entirely new kinds of life-saving medicines. Okay, so with all that incredible promise, you knew there had to be a but, right? And there is. It's a big one. The very things that make our genetic data so incredibly powerful also make it uniquely dangerous if it gets into the wrong hands. This is not like your credit card number, where you can just call up the bank and get a new one. Now, this slide is super important because it really breaks down what makes this data so different. First off, it's immutable. You can't change your DNA, ever. So if it's breached, that's permanent. Second, it's inherited. This is huge. Your genetic information reveals incredibly personal details, not just about you, but about your parents, your kids, your entire family tree, and most of them never agreed to have their data shared. And finally, it's uniquely identifiable. Even data that's supposedly anonymized can often be traced right back to a specific person just by connecting it with other public info out there. So, okay, what's the worst that could happen if this data gets out? Well, the risks are pretty serious. We're talking about the real possibility of discrimination, insurers or employers using your genetic predisposition to a disease against you. We've already talked about how re-identification can just completely destroy the promise of anonymity. On a bigger scale, you've got economic worries like the theft of super valuable intellectual property from biotech companies. And as we just said, there are these deep personal family privacy breaches. There are even potential national security threats if you can imagine a foreign power getting its hands on a country's genomic data. Right about now, you're probably thinking, hang on, don't we have laws to stop this stuff? And yeah, we do. But our legal framework was really built for a different time, for a different kind of data. And the unique, inherited nature of our genes creates some really serious loopholes. You can see how we've tried to build up this wall of protection over the years. Way back in '96, HIPAA set the baseline for protecting health info held by doctors and insurance companies. Then in 2008, a law called GINA came along to specifically target genetic discrimination. And in 2009, the HITECH Act kind of beefed up HIPAA's rules for the internet age. So on the surface, it looks like a pretty solid wall, but there are cracks. Okay, this is absolutely crucial to understand. GINA's limits. The Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act does a very specific thing. It stops your health insurer from dropping you or jacking up your rates because of your genes, and it stops your boss from using that info to hire or fire you. Great. But look at what it doesn't protect. Life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, all of them can still ask for and use your genetic information to decide whether to cover you or not. That's a huge, huge gap. And wow, this case just perfectly lays out the ethical mess we're in because of that inherited property we talked about. In a real case, a woman in a research study handed over her father's medical records, but the father hadn't consented to this, and he fought back. The government agency in charge ultimately sided with him, saying his right to privacy was the most important thing. It's a case that just puts a spotlight on this central problem. One person's consent can unlock the genetic secrets of their entire family, whether they like it or not. So all of this, the legal gaps, the ethical nightmares, it all points to one thing. We can't just play defense anymore. We need a proactive, specialized defense that's designed from the ground up for the unique weirdness of genomic data. We need to build a system that everyone can actually trust. And that brings us to the big central question, right? How do we possibly create a system that's strong enough to protect our most private data, but is also flexible enough to allow for all the life-saving research and innovation that we all want? Well, the answer seems to lie in teamwork and a whole new kind of blueprint. And here it is. This is the blueprint. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, got a bunch of experts together from the government, from universities, from private companies, and they created this comprehensive guide. It's a voluntary framework that any organization can use to build up its defenses for genomic data. It's not a law, but it's meant to be the gold standard. And you know, this isn't some dusty government report that just sits on a shelf. It's made for the entire system, the whole shebang. From the company you send your saliva to for an ancestry test, to the clinical lab that processes your doctor's test, all the way to the research institutes and big pharma companies developing new cures, and even the cloud providers who store all this data. Everybody who touches this data has a part to play. So what does this fortress actually look like? Well, the NIST framework is built around this continuous cycle of 6 core functions. The best way to think about it is like layers of defense protecting a castle, and at the very center, in the keep, is your DNA. Okay, let's walk through this. It all starts with govern. That's about setting the big picture strategy. Who's in charge of what? What are the rules? Next is identify. Pretty simple. You can't protect what you don't know you have. This means making a list of all your data, all your systems, and all the possible threats. Then you've got protect, which is putting the actual safeguards in place like encryption and access controls. After that is detect. You're constantly scanning for anything weird, any potential attacks. If you find something, you move to respond, taking immediate action to shut it down. And finally, recover, getting everything back online and, importantly, learning from what happened to make your defenses even stronger. You see, it's a living, breathing cycle. But here's the key thing. This is not just some generic cybersecurity plan you could apply to a bank. The framework is specifically tuned to the real-world challenges of genomics through what it calls mission objectives. These are the specific, high-stakes goals that any organization handling this data has to get right. And this table here is a great way to see how it all connects in the real world. So let's take a big, important goal, a mission objective like protect relatives' privacy. The framework says, okay, that translates into a concrete action under the govern function. Your company has to create specific policies that deal with the impact on family members. Or take another one, manage informed consent. That links right over to the protect function, and it requires you to use strict access controls to make absolutely sure data is never used in a way the person didn't agree to. It turns these abstract ideas into actual actionable steps. So let's zoom back out. What does this all mean? This isn't just a technical problem for cybersecurity nerds to solve. It's a societal challenge. It really gets to the heart of the future of medicine, ethics, and what it even means to have privacy in the genomic age. When you boil it all down, it comes back to one word: trust. For people to be willing to share their most personal information for research, for all of us to embrace the life-saving potential of personalized medicine, we have to believe that our information is safe. The NIST framework isn't just a rulebook. It's an attempt to build that foundation of trust that will let all of this incredible progress actually happen. And that leaves us right here with this final, absolutely critical question. We are standing on the edge of medical breakthroughs that seriously used to be science fiction, but unlocking that future means we have to navigate this incredibly delicate balance. How much do we share for the common good, and how fiercely do we protect the code that makes us who we are? Finding that balance? Well, that's the great challenge of our time.